All right, let's dive into Macondo. Netflix just released their take on 100 Years of Solitude, and the reviews are coming in hot.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to cover today. Variety, RogerEbert.com, The Guardian, even foreign policy. We've got it all.
Wow.
Our goal, to give you the rundown on this adaptation, whether you've read the book or not.
It's pretty incredible to see the response this adaptation is getting. 100 Years of Solitude is a literary icon in Latin America.
It seems like everyone is talking about how close the series sticks to the book. Variety called it one of the most faithful adaptations in recent years. Why do you think that faithfulness is so crucial, especially for a book as layered and complex as this one?
Well, I think it goes beyond complexity.
Yeah.
100 Years of Solitude isn't just a story. It's a cornerstone of magical realism, a touchstone for Colombian identity. For a lot of people, seeing this on screen is like seeing their heritage come to life.
It adds a whole new layer of significance, for sure. And speaking of bringing things to life, the reviews are raving about the visuals.
Yep.
The Guardian even called it startlingly beautiful. They highlighted the scene with the rain of yellow flowers.
I can only imagine what that looks like on screen.
It makes you wonder if those incredible visuals might be a response to the challenge of adapting this particular novel. It jumps around in time, weaves together generations of this family, and blurs the lines between what's real and what's fantasy.
Oh, absolutely. The novel's structure and just the sheer density of the narrative are major hurdles for any adaptation. Foreign policy even suggested that some of the magic is lost going from page to screen because it's a more linear format.
Do you think that losing some of that magic is just unavoidable when you adapt a book this complex? Or is there a way to keep that essence even if you change the format?
That's the question a lot of adaptations struggle with. How to stay true to the original while working within a completely different medium. It seems like they're leaning into the visuals to make up for that structural shift, trying to create that same sense of wonder you get from the book, but using visuals instead of words.
It's like creating a new language of magical realism, but one that's specifically for the screen. Now, not everyone is thrilled with every aspect. Some critics found the pacing to be a bit slow. Variety used the word lackadaisical.
Oh, wow.
What do you think? Is that slow pace a flaw, or could it be intentional, a way to let the story and the visuals really sink in?
That's a great question. It's interesting how different reviewers have different opinions. Variety, for instance, says that it encourages you to absorb every intricately curated frame and moment.
That makes sense. Reading a book lets you set your own pace, but with film and television, the tempo is set for you. Maybe the slower pace is a way to invite the viewer into a more contemplative experience, more similar to how we might savor the writing in a book.
I think you're right. Different mediums require different approaches to telling a story. What works in a novel might not work on screen. In this case, it seems like the filmmakers are using pacing to create a particular mood and atmosphere they want you to linger in Macondo.
Speaking of lingering, the Buendía family saga is as fascinating as it is complicated. Did the actors capture these larger-than-life characters?
The reviews I've seen have been very positive about the performances, especially Marleta Soto as the older Ursula. She's the family matriarch, holds everything together.
Right.
And Claudio Catania's portrayal of Colonel Aureliano Buendía has also been praised. He's the patriarch, a figure of revolution and solitude.
Foreign policy mentioned that Akima's performance as Rebecca was particularly haunting. She arrives carrying a bag of her parents' bones. What a powerful introduction.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great example of how they use visuals to convey the novel's mix of realism and fantasy. A striking image that instantly tells you something about Rebecca's backstory.
It seems like they've put a lot of effort into translating those unforgettable moments from the book to the screen. This brings us to a slightly sensitive topic. While the adaptation is largely faithful, there's been discussion about how it handles certain, let's say, controversial elements of the book, especially those related to sex with minors and how male privilege is portrayed. Yeah.
This is a discussion that comes up a lot when adapting older works, right?
It does. RogerEbert.com criticized the series for not updating or reinterpreting those elements. They argue that it doesn't do enough to address how problematic they are.
That's a valid concern, especially given how societal norms have changed. But other reviews offer a different perspective.
Right. Foreign Policy noted that while the series doesn't completely remove those elements, they are lessened compared to the book.
The Guardian, while acknowledging the potential issues with how the adaptation handles these icky aspects, ultimately called it a compelling and beautiful adaptation. It seems to suggest that the adaptation, even with its flaws, manages to engage with the difficult aspects of the book in a meaningful way.
It's a very delicate balance. When you adapt a classic, how do you stay true to the original while addressing content that might be considered outdated or offensive today? Can you do both, or do you have to choose one over the other? That is a tough question. On the one hand, you want to respect the author's vision and the historical context. On the other hand, you have to be aware of the impact those portrayals might have on today's audience. Maybe the answer is to find a way to present those elements in a way that acknowledges their complexity and encourages viewers to think critically about them.
That's a very thoughtful approach, and it seems like this adaptation is doing just that. It's sparking conversations, which is valuable in itself. Now, it's also important to acknowledge the role Colombia plays in this adaptation, since that it was filmed entirely in Colombia with a Colombian cast, and even has the support of Garcia Marquez's family.
That's incredible. It really speaks to how deeply Colombians feel connected to this story. Foreign policy even mentioned that some Colombians were pre-boycotting the series. They were worried it wouldn't live up to the book.
That's fascinating.
It shows just how culturally significant 100 Years of Solitude is in Colombia. It's a national treasure, a masterpiece that captures their history, their identity, their worldview. This makes me wonder how the series might be received differently by Colombians compared to international audiences. For some, it could be deeply personal, while for others, it's an introduction to a world and a culture they may not be familiar with.
You're absolutely right. This adaptation is operating on multiple levels. It's a retelling of a beloved story, a showcase for Colombian talent, and a bridge between cultures. And the fact that it's generating these discussions is a testament to its power.
It feels like we're just at the beginning of a much bigger conversation. We've established that this adaptation is being praised for staying true to the source material, the incredible visuals, and the strong performances. But there are also questions about the pacing, how it handles those controversial elements, and how it navigates the cultural weight of the novel.
It's a lot to consider.
And we've only just begun to explore those ideas. So join us for the next part of our deep dive as we dig deeper into the themes, the characters, and the legacy of 100 Years of Solitude.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Bye.